Thank you, Anthony. I would like to challenge you to go to the JCT symposium and start talking about traffic lights. See if you make it out of the building alive. You won't. Right, last session before lunch, and I'd like to call to the stage, me, basically. So, sorry, you got me again. I'll try and be fairly brief with this, because I know I am between you and lunch. I'd like to just refer back to the previous presentation for two reasons, really. Firstly, Anthony, thank you for setting the bar very low, so the slides I produced yesterday are unlikely to be the most boring looking of the day, so thank you very much for that. And secondly, what I really want to do is just expand on the line around the £50 million signals funding, which we've awarded, and just do a little bit of a debrief. Now we've awarded the money, just give you a little bit of the idea of the thinking that went around that, and just again, labour the point. So you did steal my thunder, but it's a point we do need to make again and again, that actually future success is based on what we do with this and how well we prove the case. So that's not really a point we can say too often, really. So thank you for that. So traffic signals funding. I think you all know what it is, but I've just got a couple of slides just to go back through some stuff that you'll seen before, but just to set the stage, just to remind us all where we are with this. So apparently there is something called a plan for drivers, I've heard recently. But there is the plan for drivers. I won't ask you to read the bit on the right, but that's the bit of the plan for drivers that says some nice things about the importance of traffic signals, which it's there really to make the point that was actually something that a minister signed off, which is fairly unusual. To get a minister to say things about traffic signals is quite a thing. So immediately we are ahead of where we've been for a long while, I think, in terms of the visibility of traffic signals and the importance of them in managing an urban network. So well done for us for doing that. The bits on the left you've just heard about. Anthony's just told us about that. The plan for drivers came out in October. It has a number of themes, one of which is around smoother journeys, which obviously, certainly in an urban context, managing traffic signals, managing their performance and maintenance is a pretty much, you could argue it's maybe the only lever we really have to immediately affect the smoothest of journeys is traffic signals. And to get our political masters to recognise that is a good thing. That will do us no harm. 3 funds were made available through ITMF. Again, 2 interesting points. As Anthony said, this was the only commitment in the plan for drivers. I said ITMF then, didn't mean that. Through plan for drivers. £70 million through plan for drivers. Again, the only part of the plan for drivers that involves the government writing a cheque, which I think is excellent. And I think in the years I've been involved in signalling, which is quite a lot now, I think that's significantly, easily the greatest amount of money that government has ever put into, as capital, put into the local authority traffic signal, traffic control sector. So again, fantastic news. Fantastic that we were able to announce that. It was broken up in quite a complicated way, and I think, again, this is a slide that many of you will see before, but I think it's worth a quick gallop through. So £70 million broke into 3 funds. TSOG, Traffic Signal Obsolescence Grant, a grant aimed at doing what it says, fixing obsolescence. Going back to what Michaela said yesterday, we know there's an issue with 2 and 3G. We also know there's an issue with halogen. We know there are plenty of controllers out there with components in them that are now very hard, if not impossible, to source. We know we need to do that. And we know that at current rates, with the best intention of all in the sector, the asset is ageing, and the cliff edges around obsolescence are getting nearer, and we're not really addressing things fast enough. So that was really crucial. That. Now, I think I just want to say before we go any further, many of you in the room, the suppliers and some of the authorities, will have had conversations with me over the last 2 years while we've been building the evidence base to allow us to get government at its highest levels to recognise that need. So thank you all. Pat yourselves on the back. That was very important. Those discussions, which early on seemed quite vague and quite esoteric and a bit random, all played into us making the case for that. So well done all. GLF, the Green Light Fund. Back in 2021, we issued £15 million through something called the Traffic Signal Maintenance Grant, and that was aimed at just saying to government, in the same way that you put money into potholes and bridge repairs and flood alleviation and all these other things, if you put a bit of money into signals maintenance, we can just go out and fix stuff, and that will have a benefit. And that was hugely successful. We delivered nearly 300 schemes. We had parts of the country where the funding was spent, where we showed an 8, maybe even 12% reduction in queuing and in journey times. GLF said, give us more money and we'll do more of that. allow us to do that. And so we had those two funds. And we ran them as a kind of either or. We knew a lot of authorities had obsolescence issues they wanted to deal with. TSOG was available for that. We knew a lot of authorities had done well with obsolescence work and were doing really well at taking old systems out of the off street. So there was a fund that they could access. We weren't penalising people for the fact they'd actually got on and dealt with obsolescence themselves. So there were two funds there. We also realised that obsolescence is something which affects everybody to some degree. So we came up with this slightly complex arrangement within TSOG where all authorities that get maintenance funding, so to get slightly technical, all authorities that get Section 31 funding awarded each year through the highway maintenance block or the integrated transport block to go maintain stuff, they all got a share of £10 million based on the same formula that uses population, area, road length to award the money. There's a share of that £10 million because everybody has some obsolescence issue. Even the best authority still has some halogen somewhere, still has some sites that could be converted to ELV, a whole lot of other things. But the £20 million block was the challenge fund. This is the bit that we targeted at authorities that bid for money, that passed the challenge to win money. This was the bit that we could challenge at authorities that really needed it. And then on top of that, GLF as well for those that didn't qualify. And then as Anthony said, and we've talked about today, we'll talk about a little bit more after lunch, ITMF is still to come. That's the research bit. That's the bit that's for future-looking innovation. That's the bit that the 4 sessions you heard this morning are aimed at getting you thinking about. That's the innovation money that's coming. Now that's open now. Bidding is open for that. Doesn't close until July. The reason for that is to allow us all to come to events like this and really get our thinking together, form those consortiums, think about what we want to do, and get on and start to deliver things. Right. Pretty much everybody in the country that was able to bid for funding. Now that in itself is quite a thing, and you know we over the years, certainly with things like the CITS funding we've issued, the funding we've issued for pilots for technology, we have wrestled with how do we get more people interested? How do we ensure that more people bid? Now this time we had 118 of the 121 eligible parts of England bid for the grants. That's pretty much all of those. Now, if I'd had a bit more time, I might have... Well, no, I wouldn't have coloured in the ones that didn't, because I don't want to name and shame anybody, but some people couldn't. Some people who are in special measures around Section 114 notices and being showing budget deficits weren't able. There was only 3 of those. Everybody else put a bid in, which is amazing. We've never had that level of engagement. And I put that down to the TTF. I put that down largely to using this forum to really shout about this, which we've been doing since October, and really get everyone motivated. So everybody put a bid in for the competitive element. We got 103 bids. That related to 118 parts of the country because we allowed, in combined authority areas, we gave the option for combined authorities to make a combined bid for their authorities or to stand back and allow their constituents to bid separately. So the numbers don't quite add up. It looks like, well, how is 118, 103, how are they the same? But they are the same because of the way different areas of England applied for money. That funding allowed us to award, that level of application allowed us to award £500,000 lots to 67 authorities. And again, which covered 80 areas because some of the awards were to combined authorities. This is for the challenge element. So this is for the element where we asked people some fairly simple questions. Now, what we tried to do with this, because government does have a concern and politicians do have a concern about us imposing complex bidding competitions on people and making authorities spend lots of time and effort bidding for funding when they might not be successful. So we've been very careful with this, as we did with the TSM grant a few years ago, to ask just some very simple questions. Just ask authorities 5 or 6 simple questions and ask them to evidence their understanding of technology, their plans, the way they think about technology, just to give us a feel for who was likely to be able to spend the money successfully, and no more than that. So it was a very lightweight process, and I hope those that competed in the process found that, because that was the intention. That got us to 67 bids covering 80 areas, £500,000 each. We then had the £10 million of automatic funding. This went to everybody. Again, 103 authorities received that. Everybody in the country got some of that, either directly or in combined authority areas. It goes to the combined authority, and then there will be a local mechanism, which basically means you can go and argue among yourselves how you divide it up. It's not our problem. That's the joy of combined authorities for government. But fundamentally, everybody has access to some of that funding. And that was based, as I say, on the ITB formula, the formula we use to spread money around. That left me with an immensely complicated challenge, and oh God, how I regretted making it this complicated. But it was. And basically, everybody got some TSOG. Some people got more TSOG. Some people got some TSOG and some GLF. Some people got the TSOG directly and the GLF to the Combined Authority. And I spent 2 weeks going quietly mad trying to work it all out. But I did. All got there in the end. So we basically awarded 77 grants directly to local highway authorities, 7 to combined mayoral authorities, and 18 to constituent local authorities of different flavours. So some people got bits of one, bits of the other, bits of both, or whatever. The point here really is that the money is now with those authorities that have been awarded money, and I would encourage the combined authorities and their constituents to get on and work out how that funding gets spent within their areas, whether it gets spent at combined authority level because there is a combined authority level ownership or management of signals, or whether that money needs divesting down to the constituents. But we have 2 years to spend this, so I would encourage you to start to have those discussions in your combined authorities and start to think about how you spend that funding. So the process, we assessed all the bids independently with a team outside of DFT and LCRIG, and we brought in 2 evaluators who understand the industry but weren't involved in the process and weren't directly involved in traffic signals, and they performed a very independent qualitative analysis of all the bids. And we basically scored them against the criteria we asked you for. The questions we asked you to answer gave you guidance of the things that the questions should result, what your responses should be, what evidence you should provide. That allowed us to produce unweighted scoring. We scored everything in the same way against the challenge criteria, and that allowed us to give scores for each of the bids. We then ranked them, and we funded them top down. We basically listed them, number 1 down to the bottom, and we went down until the money ran out, and that was the line. So it was a very simple, I hope, very fair process. Nothing around the types of authorities, geographical location, anything like that. It was a very simple process that got us there. I think I've got to say the quality was always very high. There were very few bids. There were maybe a couple, and again, I'm not going to name anybody, a couple that were poor, but nearly all the bids were very good. Now, it would be great if we could have funded them all, and I think we would if we could. I'm very sorry to those authorities that didn't get funding. I would have loved to be able to provide it. It came down to some very tight margins of scoring where the money stopped, but sadly the money was finite. It had to stop somewhere. Those of you that weren't successful, in the vast majority of cases, your bids were still very good. They're just not quite good enough, and I'm sorry that we had to do that. You never know. More funding may come along. As Anthony said, as I've said, the success of this will help us with the argument for doing this in the future, and that may well allow us to move forward on that. So, some thoughts on this process. The response was unprecedented. And again, you could say that was to do with the scale of the funding. You could say that was something that it was a level of funding we'd never experienced before. But the response was unprecedented. And I think us being together in rooms like this, us talking at these events, at things like at the LCRIG events like Strictly Highways, me talking at other events, Highways UK, Traffics, all sorts of other places where I've been to talk about this, and actually coming out and speaking to individually has really helped. It's really helped get us all behind this and galvanise us to bid for this money. And it's government money. It's there to use. Let's use it. Let's bid for it. Let's get it spent. So great, fantastic that happened. Is this the TTF effect? Well, I'm slightly biased, but I would think it is. I think being part of this organisation, being part of this lens that DFT is increasingly using to sort of focus our laser beam into the sector, it can't be a bad thing. Being here today cannot be a bad thing. As more funding comes forward, TTF is probably going to be central to that. I hope staying in this room is a good place to be. As I've said, TSOG, GLF, and ITMF were the only funding commitments in plan for drivers. Fantastic news. Fantastic that we got DFT, Treasury, ultimately number 10, to think about this, to put it in the plan. The plan was crawled over in minute detail, so there's nothing in the plan that crept in. Everything in the plan is there because it was intended to be. The funding is in there. That tells you something about us finally getting people to understand the impact of traffic signalling. Ministers at number 10 were taking a keen interest in this. One of the reasons why the announcement that was meant to be quite early in March was quite late in March was because we got dragged into the whole comms moment, because it was felt that this should be part of that. That again is government not saying, well, this doesn't really matter, just do it. This was government saying, no, this should be part of what we're saying around Plan for Drivers. That, I think, was stressful for us, and it made things a bit complex, and it delayed the award, but it's great in terms of the prominence of signalling in terms of the government. I'm going to hammer that point home again. A lot of what we achieved was because we were able to say, look how well we did with the funding you gave us to spend in 2021. 300 schemes delivered, great savings, a great level of understanding of that. Now, for TSOG and GLF, because again we are awarding quite small amounts of money, £500,000 doesn't go a long way in terms of signals. So we're not going to go to authorities and say you must spend 10% of that on evaluation, because that's not really what the money's for. But we will evaluate. We will do it. We will get in the DFT helicopter and we'll get up to a good height and look down and try and see what you're all doing. So doing some of the simple tasks you need to do, like completing your programs, as I know you have all been asked to do, go onto the TTF website, tell us your program, tell us your planned start and end date, tell us your planned outtake cost. As you go through the program, keep updating that, because that information that you can provide quite simply, that we can then collate, is really useful. We'll be working with our colleagues in our evaluation and modelling teams. We'll be working with people like Inrix and Dominic's here to use the data that we have to look down and make some assumptions about what we're seeing in your areas, because that again produces the case. It works for us this time. I think it worked for us last time, rather. We do it again this time. I think for tomorrow we'll have the same effect, in that next time we get the opportunity to bid for this money, we will have a great evidence base. What I will say quickly about ITMF is that will be more onerous. Because we're giving larger chunks of money out, we're expecting a wider, more diverse range of solutions. There will be an expectation, and it does mention this in the guidance, there will be an expectation that you develop your own evaluation plans to deal with that. But we will be producing guidance to ensure that we all produce evaluation plans that meet the government, the Treasury guidance. So we end up with things that we can compare and count. And again, we get that wider ranging benefit analysis, that wider ranging base case data for ITMF. So what's next? We need the grant confirmation returns. We've asked you all to confirm that you have the money. Some authorities have said, how can we confirm that before the end of the programme? Well, because we're giving you the grant up front, what we expect is your finance officer, your Section 151 officer, your chief executive, whoever signs these kind of things, to confirm that your programme is viable and that you intend to deliver it. We're not expecting them to confirm that you will deliver the programme, because none of us have crystal balls, but we do want confirmation that they are willing to confirm that you as an authority, in all good faith, intend to deliver traffic signal maintenance. That's all. But you need to do that in the next few months. Upload the scheme lists, give us that data, because that allows us to start. DSIS is coming. I think we've talked briefly about this. We talked this morning about this. We do want you, as part of receiving this funding, to submit some data to us to allow us to start to produce a national numbering schema of all the signals in the UK as a first stage of moving to digital traffic signal controller information. There is some guidance coming out shortly. Again, there will be some work for you to do. It's not particularly onerous. Doing that work will be hugely beneficial for us in moving this forward. Keep us updated as you deliver schemes, as you deliver everything under cost, before time, cheaper, more effectively than you say you will, because that's how everything works on highways. Tell us about that. Keep updating that programme. Prepare for ITMF. Well, we're all in the room today. That's what we're doing. ITMF, again, is the next round of funding. We expect lots of great bids for that. I'm sure we will. Everything I've heard today fills me with confidence that that will happen. And as always, keep an eye on the TTF website, particularly the traffic signal funding page. That's the page where all the various bits of guidance, release, everything we're talking about around the three funds is all going on that page. That's the page where you can access the various resources we've talked about. Keep looking back, bookmark that page, because that's quite important to this whole process. And that's it. Thank you very much.